Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at Toxic Ties by
Yes.
Wilma Zaleski.
hmm
This is a brand new book from Advise the Heart, an imprint of Bald and Bonkers Network, LLC.
Yeah.
It's not even out until February 3rd, 2025.
Mm.
But you're getting a sneak peek right here, right now,
No.
because we were lucky enough to get our hands on an advance copy.
Oh, very lucky. It's such a fascinating read. And it just feels so relevant to how we're all navigating relationships these days.
You know, I used to think toxic relationships were all about like huge blow-ups, constant drama.
Right, right.
But Zaleski really flips that script and introduces this idea of toxic whispers.
Uh-huh.
These are the subtle patterns of behavior that can be just as damaging in the long run, maybe even more so because they're harder to spot.
Absolutely.
They're like whispers
Yeah.
because they fly under the radar.
Yeah.
But the impact can be deafening.
They really can be, and that's where I think the book gets so insightful. She goes beyond the obvious signs of toxicity, like screaming matches,
Right.
and dives into behaviors that many of us might not even realize are harmful. She breaks these harmful behaviors down into three categories, a toxicity triangle, if you will.
All right, I'm intrigued. What are the three sides of this toxicity triangle?
So you've got your verbal, your emotional, and even your financial forms of toxicity. And Zalewski gives really specific examples for each, which I think really helps you recognize them in your own life.
You know, as you were describing that, I was remembering this one friendship. I always felt so drained after spending time with this person. It wasn't anything big, just this constant feeling of being emotionally exhausted.
And that exhaustion is a key indicator that something's not right.
Right.
The book really emphasizes the psychological effects of these seemingly small, toxic behaviors. They can chip away at your self-esteem, trigger anxiety, even lead to financial strain if you're constantly being pressured to lend money or cover expenses for this person.
Wow.
It goes way beyond just relationship drama. It really impacts your well-being on multiple levels.
So what are some other examples of those toxic whispers? I think a lot of people out there are probably curious if they've encountered this without even realizing it.
Absolutely. One that really resonated with me was the idea of walking on eggshells around a friend. You know that feeling of constantly censoring yourself? Or being afraid to speak your mind because you're worried about their reaction? It can be so exhausting and create this sense of imbalance in the relationship.
Yeah, it's like you're always trying to manage their emotions instead of focusing on your own needs.
Right.
And the longer it goes on, the more you start to question your own perceptions. I can see how this can be especially dangerous in romantic relationships.
Precisely. And that brings us to one of the most insidious forms of manipulation that Zalewski covers. Gaslighting.
Okay, before we go there,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to define that term for those who might not be familiar with it.
You're right. Gaslighting is a form of manipulation where someone makes you doubt your own sanity or reality. They might deny things that happened, twist your words, or even flat out lie to make you question your memory and perceptions.
Wow, it's like they're slowly eroding your sense of self, making you feel like you can't trust your own judgment.
Exactly. And the scariest part is that it can be incredibly subtle, especially at first.
Zalewski gives some really chilling examples in the book, right?
She does. One that really stuck with me involved a woman whose partner convinced her that she was misremembering their finances, ultimately leading to her taking on more debt. He would constantly question her memory, telling her things like, "You're always exaggerating," or "You're imagining things."
Wow, it's scary how easily someone can manipulate your perception of reality.
It really is, and that's why recognizing the signs of gaslighting is so crucial. This book really provides those aha moments where you realize, wait, this has happened to me.
And once you recognize it,
Yeah.
how do you deal with it? Because that seems incredibly difficult.
It is difficult, but the book does offer some practical strategies. One of the most important things is to document your experiences. Keep a journal, save emails or text messages, anything that can help you create a record of what's happening. It can be incredibly validating to look back and see that, no, you're not imagining things.
That makes sense when someone's constantly telling you that you're wrong or making things up. It's easy to start doubting yourself. Having that external record can be a powerful tool to ground yourself in reality.
Exactly. And it can also be helpful to share your experiences with someone you trust, a friend, family member, therapist, anyone who can offer an outside perspective and remind you that you're not alone.
That support system is so crucial, especially when you're dealing with something as insidious as gaslighting. It's a reminder that you have people in your corner who believe you and support you.
Absolutely. One thing that really struck me about Toxic Ties is how it goes beyond just romantic relationships. Zalewski also delves into the dynamics of toxic friendships, family relationships, even professional settings.
Yeah, when we were talking about that walking on eggshells feeling earlier, I immediately thought about a former boss who had that effect on everyone. It created this atmosphere of fear and anxiety in the entire workplace.
It's fascinating how those toxic patterns can repeat themselves across different types of relationships. And it makes you realize how important it is to be aware of those red flags, no matter who you're interacting with.
The book has a really insightful section on parental manipulation in adulthood, right? I think that's something a lot of people don't even realize could be a form of toxicity.
It is, and it's often incredibly subtle. Zalewski highlights how some parents, even with the best intentions, can unknowingly use guilt obligation or financial leverage to control their adult children's lives.
That makes me think about the financial side of the toxicity triangle that you mentioned earlier. What are some specific examples of how that plays out?
Well, it can range from constantly borrowing money without repaying it to pressuring you into making financial decisions that benefit them but put you at risk. It can even involve using guilt trips to get you to spend money on them or give up financial opportunities for their sake.
So it's not always about outright theft or fraud, but more about this subtle manipulation of your financial well-being.
Exactly, and it can be really difficult to navigate, especially when it's coming from someone you love and trust. But the book really emphasizes the importance of setting financial boundaries, just like you would with any other type of boundary.
That's so important, and it ties back to recognizing your own worth and understanding that you have the right to protect your financial well-being. You don't have to sacrifice your own security or goals to please someone else, even if it's your parent.
You're absolutely right, and on that note, I think it's important to acknowledge that even when you recognize toxicity and take steps to extricate yourself from the relationship, it can still leave a lasting impact. There's often a grieving process, a sense of loss and betrayal, even if you know you made the right decision.
And that's something we don't talk about enough. It's like there's this expectation that once you escape the toxic situation, you should just be able to move on and be happy. But it's rarely that simple.
It's not. Zalewski dedicates a whole chapter to dealing with the aftermath of a toxic relationship. She talks about the importance of self-care, rebuilding your support system, and even seeking professional help if needed.
Those are all crucial steps in the healing process. And it's a reminder that recovery takes time. It's okay to not be okay right away.
You know, when we talk about recovering from toxic relationships, it's important to address the role of social media. It's become this breeding ground. Your comparison pressure, and even manipulation.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in those perfectly curated online personas, thinking everyone else is living these amazing, drama-free lives. It can be a real recipe for insecurity and self-doubt, especially when you're already feeling vulnerable from a toxic relationship.
Absolutely, and Toxic Ties doesn't shy away from addressing that. Zalewski explores how social media can be used for emotional manipulation, creating pressure to conform, fueling financial exploitation. It's really eye-opening.
It makes you really question those seemingly perfect lives we see projected online, doesn't it? Like, what's really going on behind those carefully crafted Instagram posts and perfectly filtered selfies?
Exactly, and it brings us back to that importance of critical thinking that we talked about earlier. Don't take everything at face value. Question those curated narratives, look for inconsistencies, and most importantly, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is, and that goes for both online and offline interactions.
And speaking of online manipulation, how do we protect ourselves from gaslighting in the digital age? It seems like it would be even harder to spot when you're not face-to-face with someone.
You're right, it can be more challenging, but the same principles apply. Document your interactions, save screenshots of messages, and pay attention to any patterns of behavior that make you feel uncomfortable or question your reality.
So it's even more important to have that strong support system in place. People you can talk to and reality check your experiences with, especially when so much of our communication happens online these days.
Absolutely, and if those doubts become overwhelming, remember there's no shame in seeking professional help. A therapist can provide guidance and strategies for coping with the effects of gaslighting and emotional manipulation, whether it's happening online or offline.
It's a reminder that mental health is just as important as physical health, and taking care of your emotional well-being is essential, especially when you're navigating the complexities of relationships in the digital age.
You know, one thing that really impressed me about Toxic Ties is that it goes beyond just identifying the problem. It offers concrete strategies for healing and moving forward. It's not just about escaping a bad situation, it's about building a better future for yourself.
Right, Zalewski talks about the importance of self-care therapy, rebuilding your support network, all these essential steps for recovery. And she even encourages sharing your story, which I think is so powerful. It can be so healing to speak your truth and connect with others who have been through similar experiences.
And not only is it healing for the individual, but it can also help raise awareness and create a culture where toxic behavior is no longer tolerated. It's about empowering yourself and others to create healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
It's about reclaiming your narrative
Uh-huh.
and rewriting the script for your own life. I think that's a really powerful message, especially for anyone who's ever felt trapped in a toxic dynamic.
Absolutely. Toxic Ties is more than just a self-help book. It's a call to action. It's about recognizing our worth, setting boundaries, and creating a culture of respect in all our relationships.
And it's a reminder that healthy relationships are possible. You deserve to be treated with respect, kindness, and authenticity.
I couldn't agree more. And what I find so powerful about Zalewski's approach is that it's not about blaming the other person. It's about taking ownership of your own well-being and making choices that lead to healthier, more fulfilling connections.
So for those of you listening, if any of this has resonated with you, I highly recommend checking out Toxic Ties when it's released on February 3rd. You can pre-order your copy now from Advise the Heart and be one of the first to dive into this insightful and timely book.
I think it's a book that everyone should read, honestly, even if you haven't experienced a full-blown toxic relationship. The insights and strategies in this book can help you build healthier relationships from the start.
And isn't that what we all want? Strong, supportive, and genuine connections.
Absolutely, and this book gives us the tools to create them.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
Yeah.
and I know it can feel heavy. But remember, you are not alone, and you deserve to be treated with respect in all your relationships. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, it can feel really overwhelming.
But that's where this deep dive comes in, right?
Right.
It's about giving you the tools and the knowledge to spot those toxic patterns and make positive changes.
Exactly.
Toxic Ties really empowers you
Yeah.
to take control.
Yeah, it does. It gives you that framework
Yeah.
and the tools to actually take action.
And that's the thing. Knowledge is power,
Right.
right? Even if you haven't personally been in a toxic relationship, what we've discussed today can help you build healthier connections right from the start.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's currently struggling, remember, you are not alone. There is help available. And this book is a great starting point.
One thing I really appreciated about Toxic Ties was how it went beyond just diagnosing the problem. It gave real actionable steps for healing and moving forward.
Yeah, she doesn't just leave you hanging with a bunch of labels, right?
Right,
She
yeah.
actually gives you the tools to start making changes.
And I love that she talks about the power of sharing your story. You know, it can be incredibly healing to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And connect with others who've been through something similar.
Absolutely. And not only is it healing for the individual, but it raises awareness, right? And it starts to shift the culture so that toxic behavior isn't tolerated anymore.
Yeah, it's about reclaiming your power, your voice.
Yeah.
And writing a new chapter for yourself.
Exactly. And remember, healthy relationships are possible. You deserve respect, kindness, and authenticity.
Couldn't have said it better myself. If you're ready to take that step, remember Toxic Ties comes out February 3rd, 2025. You can pre-order it now from Advise the Heart. Go ahead and treat yourself to a healthier future.
I love that. That's a great way to put it.
Well, this has been another fantastic deep dive. I always learn so much from these conversations,
Me too.
and I hope our listeners do too. We'll be back next week with another fascinating topic. But until then, take care of yourselves and